Okay, so what is my story? I think I've spent so much of my life searching for something, and I did that by trying so many different things to sort of find out what did and didn't work. And it took me so many years of getting it wrong, for the right reasons, and obviously like the lessons it teaches you. And it wasn't until I really took a step back and got into more of like the inner work, and spirituality generally, all of those sorts of things, that I could really reflect on the intention of what I was doing, why I was doing it, and a lot of those reasons were survival based. So it was, I want to do a law degree because that will mean I'm okay for the rest of my life, that sort of security, or I want to start my own business so it makes loads of money and I'm all right. And it was all about just this safety-based or fear-based intention. And it wasn't until I got out of that and really learned to work with and be introduced to like a part of myself that was like, well, actually, like, what do you want to do? Like, take those things out of it. If you could do anything, what would you do? And my goodness me, that took me on a journey, a big journey. And all the things that I've sort of learned from that and through the lessons of doing the wrong things, that's all in the book, and it takes you through the whole process of that discovery. And I used to go into these things like, everyone tells me I've got a lot of energy, which is probably right most of the time. Obviously we always have our downtime, but I would go into these things with like this boundless energy, this enthusiasm, this is going to give me what I want if I just get this. And yeah, I just kept falling on my arse and not understanding why. And then I sort of had this justification within me, like, how can this be the case? I'm trying so hard, I'm pushing so hard. And yeah, it wasn't until I really unravelled all of that it started to make sense for me. My spiritual journey, well, if I'm honest, I thought it was a load of bollocks for many years, and I think younger me would look at me now in complete disbelief. But it was something that, I've just sort of mentioned, those times when I was on my arse was the phrase I used. And it's like, I think the most rock bottom that I was, it's sort of in my younger years when I was 18, was when I had ME. And it was such a time of reflection where the one thing I couldn't do anymore was what I'd done my whole life, which was just push more and try harder and put more effort in. And of course that just makes you more and more ill. So I just had to literally surrender to whatever it was. And it's in those darkest times that things were just coming to me. I was finally listening to like my body and just myself really. And when I was rebuilding from the ME, all it was to do was to become normal me again. And I did it to slightly less of an extent or an extreme than I was. But then the same things happened. I just wasn't getting where I wanted or what I wanted out of life. And so every time that was happening, I wouldn't quite have, been on my arse as low as I was when I was ill, but they were times where I was just sort of put back down again to really reflect, and it was just teaching me how to tune in and listen to myself again and again and again. And it wasn't until I really understood that and learned how to do that, and give myself that time and patience, that I was able to do it. And so I've gone from one extreme to the other. I never thought I would be talking about, writing about, sharing posts about spirituality. I was the least likely person, which is probably very ironic. I've had to face a lot of my own sort of critical thoughts about that, and quite what a change I've made in my life from being, just so corporate, money motivated. And I don't mean corporate in, I was never really like in an office, but I mean just chasing money, chasing all of that. And it's been a very big change, and that's just been my personal journey with spirituality. And I think it was around me quite a lot growing up, and I just rejected it until, it's funny, until there's nothing else and you really need something. And yeah, that's been my journey. Wow, well, my dark night of the soul, I've had 2. So, lucky me. No, I've had, so my first one was when I was 18 and I had ME, and it was, again, like, I didn't know if I was gonna live. I didn't know if I wanted to live. I didn't know if I'd ever get like a quality of life back, and that was what really made me stop. And I think it was then really that I learnt this connection with my body, only through very sort of what I want to say, like physical means, so like food, movement and exercise, things like that. And as I say, it sort of managed to get me back to health to an extent, and I could sort of live what you'd call a normal life. But I was just using these things in order to be that old version that had made me ill in the first place. And so I just think that that was my round one. And then I carried on for a lot of years. Obviously, it made me very scared when I was like that, because I had no financial security at all. And then I was so ill, like there were times when I was asleep for 20 hours a day. So being able to commit to a job or do anything was really challenging. And I just sort of declared to myself that I would never be in that situation again. I'm going to make myself safe, and that had been my main motivating factor. So I'd sort of worked very hard, on that sort of, that chasing. And I did it quite well, and there were parts of it that I did enjoy. I'm not saying it was all, some horrible time. It was exciting, I was building a business, I was learning stuff. But it was all to get to a point where I was safe enough in case it ever happened again. It was like all very fear-driven. And so then I had my second dark night of the soul, round 2, which was, so I'd sort of, along with like the corporate, that I'd call it more societal pressure, the doing what you think you should be doing. And I'd done all of it, so I'd done uni, I'd built my business, I was married, we lived in a lovely house, you know, all of the things that you would think go on this little tick box exercise. And it was just before lockdown, and I think we've been together for nearly 8 years in total. I can't remember how long we were married, but yeah, so it had been a really sort of serious relationship. And he just said he wanted a divorce. So long story short, obviously, that happens. And then lockdown hits. And there was just this point where I'd lost my home. I'd lost a lot of the people that were close to me during that marriage. And then I'd lost, obviously, the sense of safety in the world, like lockdowns going on. You know, are we even going to survive this kind of fears? And yeah, I literally had my whole world around me just crash down. The business that I'd put all of that effort and survival, you know, into creating, that was all under threat. And yeah, it was just one of those times where I was like, why is this happening again? You know, I know, like, some of these things in the wider world are out of your control. And I was just so living my life out of fear. All of it was fear-based. And I started looking into and understanding, you know, why this was. And that was it. Like, I decided I was going to change my life. And I did. And as I was going through that whole process, I started writing the book. And I've only ever done it I won't write out of, like, I have to write. I'll only write when I really want to write. And the concept came to me very gradually through those years. I sort of put it all together. And yeah, it's been like 5 years worth of work, travelling the world with my little pencil and pad. And yeah, then all the bits after, like getting it printed, getting it published. And yeah, here we are today. Oh, my writing process. I always have to connect with what I'm writing about. You know, I have to feel it, I have to experience it to an extent. And the book's probably, it was a complicated thing to put together, because I'd gone down so many different rabbit holes of things that were, you know, going to change my life and were going to make me happy and all of those things. And of course, when you put everything into one thing, it's never going to be that thing. It's just too extreme, you know, and you're never going to find what you want at the end of it. But what I managed to do was follow those rabbit holes far enough to work out where they all link together. And that became the changing point in not only the writing process for me, because then I had a very clear concept of where I was going to go with this. And I was exploring as I was writing. So it wasn't like I just sat down one day and I was like, right, you know, I'm just going to write about what I know. It was a whole journey. And so that's what the book takes you on, is that journey. And, you know, the pencil that I've got, the tradie pencil, comes with me like wherever I go, and my notepad, and I just write freehand like that. Then I don't like typing the words, so then I read that out into text. you know, on the computer. They're very clever, these computers. And as much as I'm not the best with them, I do really appreciate how they can help. And so, yeah, so then I would speak text in, and then, you know, go through, edit it, make sure it's okay. Oh, and draw my pretty pictures. It's full of stickmen figures and things like that. I like that combination of, you know, quite deep stuff that I would be writing about, and then how it's summed up with a little stick figure. You know, it made it really absorbable for me. Oh wow, that's such a big question. Spirituality is, to me, and again, we all have our own breakdown on this. It's wonderful if you can use it right, and I used it wrong for many years. I think I'd focused on things like, I would research into the law of attraction, and, you know, the power of what you focus on in your thoughts dictating your external, which is hugely true. However, what that did was scare the shit out of me about ever being able to think anything bad, or deal with any challenging emotions that would come up, which is, I mean, it's so dangerous, because like what you do with that then is, as I would sort of feel these things, I'd then go, well shit, you can't think that because that's a thought and that's going to manifest. Push it down, like ignore it. And yeah, it was just like, it's trying to only experience, you know, one end of the polarity. You know, the love and light is amazing, and, you know, it doesn't mean that dark doesn't exist. You know, it does, and it serves a huge purpose in life, and, you know, that's part of the human journey. You can't cut it out, and if you don't deal with these things as and when they come up, or as and when they're coming back up to be dealt with, all you're doing is just avoiding and bypassing the real work that needs to be done. And it's so easy to, this isn't judgment on anyone that's there either, you know, because when you are in a shit place, dealing with this stuff is never easy. It's never nice. Like, I've got like just all the empathy for people in that situation, but running away from it isn't gonna make it better. And yeah, so it wasn't until I really delved into all of that stuff and gave myself the permission to do that, that you start actually really understanding what real love and light is like. And within that, it's also appreciating that isn't all the time. It's just not. Like, it's not meant to be. How much do you learn from, you know, being in that sort of love and light all the time? Like, you just wouldn't. And so, yeah, it gave me a real appreciation for the other side of that, and quite what doing that and delving into that sort of stuff really does do. And so I always, you know, whenever I speak about spirituality now, it's a beautiful thing as a whole system, you know, or appreciating all of its elements. Right, this may surprise you. I am not a morning person. I love my sleep, and I sleep a lot. So the things that I get really excited about, like on a daily basis, are this morning going outside, and one of these flowers that I've got, it's a bulb, an inherited bulb that I didn't know was in the soil. Long story. and it's just bloomed into this beautiful bright orange flower. It's massive, and I was watching all the bees, have their little pollen breakfast this morning. Things like that get me excited. Being able to live my life the way I want to live it is the honest answer to that, so I can appreciate things like the orange flower in the morning. And I woke up this morning and I just felt like going and getting in the sea. So I went and did that, and I went for a coffee, and that's how I love starting my day. And they're the little things that get me excited. On a sort of deeper level, or on a bigger scale, I just love working one-on-one with people and watching them go through their processes to get it. And you see these sort of revelations and these things as they sort of get them, and that to me is just magic. You sort of seeing someone else progress in the same way that you have, and yeah, that's one of the things that really gets me excited, and why I particularly love working one-on-one with people.